Welcome back, my friends and family, to Expressions. I am so happy, as always, to have you here. Right now, I'm feeling excited and I'm also feeling really calm. Today is a really unique one. Today is an exercise for me in surrender, which, as part of my journey, has been tremendously confronting and tremendously beautiful as I've allowed myself, given myself permission to surrender to God, to the divine, to source, to myself and all of my emotions as they come through, and to do it as an embodiment, as a permission slip for others as well. So I have a really exciting guest here today, and before I go ahead and pass over to him, I want to highlight two of the things that I have going on. I know I spoke in the intro of this episode a little bit about the two things that I'm launching in January. The first is my community Align, which is dedicated to really building support, energy, having like a little mentor in a pocket. So I'm really excited for this one. If it calls to you, if it resonates, definitely reach out. I'll have all the links in the show notes. Also, my second amazing magnetic, when I was talking about this earlier, I debuted both of these offers to my Money Club clients. And the way that I described it is it feels like if Mariah Carey had the song that's like glittery magical, like that's how I feel about both of my offers. And if you are, as you're listening to this, or in any kind of creative capacity, I invite you to follow that glitter in and inspiration in what it is that you create. And so my second one, which is Mariah Carey glitter, like the first one, is called Momentum. And that is my 4-week intensive container. We just finished Money Club, which was 4 weeks as well. And this one has an emphasis on energy, on vitality, on not only manifestations, because we know I could talk about manifestations all day, all night, baby, and the conscious art of manifesting, but also how to maintain it, how to have and build that momentum, and how to keep it going. So if that also is something that appeals to you, I have a bunch of little bonus thrills that happen. I have general admission, I have VIP, we got sessions, members only pricing. So if this resonates with you, it's such a blessing to have this idea and to be able to birth it into form. So I very, very, very warmly and directly invite you to join if it's something that resonates with you. And now to segue into this incredible episode, which is starting from a surrender that I want you guys to hear that I'm actively doing on the episode. I have an amazing guest with me here today, someone who I met through an incredible experience that him and I both shared, where we were both prioritizing our personal, professional development, growth, expansion, and we really resonated. I have gotten to know to a certain extent who he is and his work. I am in tremendous support of him. I'm excited to bring him here to introduce him to you and to have him embody some divine masculine leadership. So I will, from this point forward, pass him the mic to take this conversation wherever it is to go. My friends, I want to present to you the amazing confidence coach, the confidence guru, Ben Clark. What is up, Ben? How you doing?
Oh, Zoe, amazing intro. And thank you so much for having me on here and for giving me the space to practice stepping into my own divine masculine. For anyone that's listening to this, like if you're listening on audio, do yourself a favor and at least check out the video and like watch how Zoe moves. I'm sure that there's a lot of women in here that follow you, and it's like we're talking about this manifestation space. Like I when I hopped on this call today, like the first thing that I noticed was I was like, Zoe, you look radiant. Like just in that the smile and the energy that's coming out and the way that you communicate, like there's so much of this authentic energy that's just naturally felt. And I think that that's a huge part of this manifesting journey that I've learned in my own life. It's like, what are the tactics? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do that? And we're going to get into this, I'm sure, but it's like a huge part of that is surrendering all of that and just flowing and expressing. And so that's some like a big part of why I'm so excited for this podcast. Because when Zoe you'd reached out, you were like immediately we're like, hey, like let's tap into our feminine and masculine polarity and let's just have a conversation. So rather than like either of us being interviewed, we just get to explore what like a flowy conversation looks like. And so I'm excited because I think there's a lot of different pieces of confidence and manifesting that really come into play here. But first, I want to talk about this idea of surrender, because like we're sitting here and surrendering into this. Like even myself, as we're going through this intro and talking about this podcast, like I notice there's like a part of me like, oh, step into my divine masculine, like lead the conversation, like whoa, pressure, right? And the first thing that I've taught myself to really think about is like, okay, great, feel all of that and surrender that and just let out whatever wants to come out. So I'm curious, like, what does surrender really mean to you and why is it so important for you? And as you do that, I'm going to close the blind a little bit on my window because the sun's about to get real bright.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And breathing in just like a genuine thank you for everything that you've shared. I love listening to this back. I love what we both agreed to co-create. I love hearing you in this role. And the first thing that kind of came through, you guys can see if you're watching the visual, I'm smiling because when he talked about like what came up for him in relation to the divine masculine, I immediately felt the same about my divine. I was like, I have to surrender. And like there's a leadership, and my journey was not surrendering. And that will go into when I answer your question on surrender, but it was having a really hard time surrendering to anything and anyone. Definitely didn't always believe in God and the divine. Definitely not to masculine or a man. I was one of those women that was like, the boss babe, like very like I can do it, all on my own. And so I felt a very similar like nervous system that I still feel in my body, this like nervous system, like, wow, this is really like we're doing it, we're surrendering. So it's
Mhm.
very real, like the thresholds that we're all feeling. And the conversation of surrender is beautiful for me because of that journey that I've been on in understanding that what surrender means to me. It first comes from having to shift who's speaking, from giving you like an intellectual definition into more of an embodiment based definition, which in and of itself is surrender. So when I was first learning all of this, it was like I was very heady, and I'm always going to be like heady and intellectual and curious. Since before I could even have words, I was super deep and philosophical. And so I love that. And so I could understand surrender. And that's how I first learned it, from this idea, this mental space of, okay, and then you relax and you breathe into it and you just let it all go, which was one thing to say. And then my body was like, fuck that, give up control of things, and to a man or to somebody else or even to myself. I didn't know or understand what any of that actually meant. Um, and it's been a journey and it's been a process. And I used to want to arrive. I used to want to be like, I'm here, I've gotten it, and I have all the answers. Here you go, and you get this answer, and and now I'm like, holy shit, it's literally the process, right?
Mm.
The process from when I first started to now, and being able to reflect on the journey of that and my journey of surrender. And then it's the energy that I bring to the process moving forward in my body, somatically, and my emotions of like, this is a lifelong thing that we get to practice, especially women. If you're feminine embodied listening to this or watching this, we get to practice how deeply can I receive. And I just pulled a tarot card over the weekend that was like, hey, you're in this as a spiritual long game, which was this moment of like, you're actually here to continue to just deepen and deepen and deepen and expand in both directions. And so when I think of surrender, this word surrender, it's that process, knowing that the overarching framework or container, and we can talk about that if we go there, but the container being to the divinity, to the source, to the God, to insert your word for higher power, that's what's holding us. And
Mm.
it's this beautiful like irony, because it's an infinite energies and it's also a container, but within that, when you surrender, it's this beautiful like, holy shit, or at least it was for me, breath of relief. And like, you can, even if you're watching the visual, like my shoulders come down, because it's like, I don't have to hold me so tight anymore. I can just be like, where are we going? What are we doing?
Mm.
And the way that I've my teaching and facilitating has shifted from being very masculine and like information bearing into like, okay, sometimes I won't even prepare before a class and I'll trust that I'm going to deliver in the highest good once I open up to my intuition, which would also be an interesting thing to navigate. So that's definitely what surrender means to me and how I've understood it so far.
Mhm. So beautiful. And what's really cool is like while you were sharing so much of that, I could just feel tingles coming from like my head to my toes, which always tells me there's really something special. Like I've learned to tap into that and feel like when that happens, okay, we're getting on to something really good. And it was just so many things that are so relevant to me in my life. Especially I love the fact that we're sitting here. I'm embracing the divine masculine, you're embracing the divine feminine. And what you had just shared was so much of your life was out of that divine feminine. It was more the do, the lead, the I don't want a man to control me. And it was like, oh, I have to give up some control. And it's funny because it's like, and control's a it has a lot of different connotations, right? But I think what's interesting for me is like likewise it was the opposite. I was always the pleaser. Oh, I'm gonna please women. I want you to approve of me. Like what can I help you do? What do you want? And so then for me it's the that opposite battle of like, or battle, really, dance of learning how to say, whoa, I can have a little bit of power here. I can make decisions. I can step in and control this situation or guide this. And like, actually, that's what most women want more than anything is you to step into your power. And like, what a scary thing that is for someone, at least for me as a man who always thought that my power needed to be subdued and quieted and put that away and do as you're told. um Follow the rules, don't rock the boat. Like you're the nice kid. You're not supposed to stir things up. And so then to feel like all of that in me, that like my whole life I've had it in, like that wants to come out, but got so trained to not. And then all of a sudden, in the last really 3 or so, I mean, the last few years, but really the last 3 months, really learning how to step into this. And it's the same thing that comes up for me is it's not a destination. It's like we want it all to be perfect, but like, no, we don't. What a lie that we're telling ourselves. And something that's came up for me lately is this idea of like thinking about life like a video game. And it's like one thing is I sit here and I want to have all of the skills and talents and abilities and abundance that maybe like a 39-year-old would have, right? So it's like I'm here at level 25 wanting everything that that level 39 has, and I'm not like honoring that there's levels, there's skills, there's things that must happen in our life. And I believe like we are these divine beings that's all accessible now, but we're playing this 3D game with this character. So honor that. So in that part of the journey. And then also like, what happens when we get to level 99 or 100 or whatever max level in this video game? Oh shoot, okay, I gotta stop, right? And then we're done. Is that really what we want to do with our life? Like we want like more levels. How can I level up even more? So it's like learn how to love that process, not try to get the dang thing. Learn how to actually embody it in every day. And when the things aren't flowing and when things are feeling there's resistance and all of this, like, thank you. I'm still here. I'm still going through this. And so I think that this idea of surrendering and just like what really touched for me there was like this idea of giving something up to something greater than you. And like for me, it's been like, how do I surrender? How do I surrender? What do I do? And I've realized now it's like all of that is exactly what is not surrender. I'm trying to figure out how to surrender. Surrender that you don't need to know how. It's like, and so for me, the greatest way to feel surrender in me now is like literally imagining that I'm trust falling. into the universe, into God, into source energy, into this infinite creative field, and just like, I don't need to solve any of it.
Mm.
And so I'm curious now, how does surrender play into manifesting?
Oof. Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Got a visceral reaction from that one.
Yeah.
I love it. This whole conversation is I love it. This word communion comes through. So
Mm,
I say often to my audience, and I'm getting even more confident about saying it to whoever, right? Is part of my gift, and I believe that we all have our unique gifts, is that I see, like in my mind's eye, words. I see all of my aesthetics, all of my graphics. I see it very clearly. I see them before I even know what I'm going to teach the class on. And it's actually helped me since before I actually was aware that I could do that. So I see words. So words like come through when people are talking, and I saw this word communion because the way that I understand communion, and I understand that it also has a lot of religious connotations, and I don't at all consider myself well versed enough to navigate that kind of conversation. But the way that I'm perceiving for the sake of this combo, communion is to understand that, like, to have a foundational understanding of higher power, and whatever word resonates with you listeners, to whether it's God or source or divine. For me, I fluctuate between God and source most of the time, so I'll have a foundational understanding of what that higher power is and how that's actually meant to support me and hold me, and how it's infinite. So that's like, and it's something I teach my clients, is this foundational principle that's non-negotiable to understand, especially when we start to get into the conversation of manifestation, which sounds like we're heading into. Having a foundation of, like, the quote unquote backbone of everything, like what supports and gives us the life of everything, and it in its truth, that it's not out to get you, it's not something to be scared of, it's actually here to love you and support you in every fucking aspect of you, including the aspects of you that you don't necessarily see right now, right? So this word communion is when you have that foundational understanding with that, surrendering that godness, sourceness, divinity that you can, and if you're watching the visual, I'm like pointing outside of me, because a lot of
mm,
us have this perception that it's, person in the sky, or like this outside energy. It's us. Like, it is also us. We are a blueprint of it, down to our cells, down to the energy. And that for me was one of the hardest. I was like 2 years into my company and having clients and facilitating when I actually had that breakthrough, that I'm like, holy fuck, that's me too. Because I would pray and stuff, and I'm like, oh, and that's, an essential lesson into coming into your creatorhood, your greatness, your manifesting consciously and deliberately, is understanding that it's a tremendous power that you are, and gift that you've been given, and a huge responsibility. So, the first thing I'm thinking of when it comes to, and feeling into, when it comes to surrender and manifestation is, and I just wrapped up Money Club, where we had our final class today, 2 hours before we're recording this. The class was on receiving. So if you take this word receiving, the first thing you have to do is receive the love of that which created everything.
mm,
Because you cannot, like, you're welcome to like block me and leave the conversation, like, you cannot, and a lot of us do, like, there's collectively a lot of people that choose to not, take this route. You'll still manifest things. There's just a consciousness that's absent from the chat, right? Or maybe you're conscious and you haven't fully received and or understood your relationship with God or source, and you're just manifesting a lot of things that you don't really want. And so I
mm,
think that segues us into the conversation of manifestation, because one of the most common things that I hear from people is, like, and I always use my own example. When I first started, I like to play with it and be like, manifesting yachts and like luxury experiences, because that's a part of my brand. So that was what I was known for in the beginning. Like, she would manifest like the luxe stuff, and that would definitely get people's attention. And they'd be like, how do I manifest this? Because I'm manifesting that. And then the invitation to see, and what I always start people with, on the conversation of surrender, is you're manifesting absolutely fucking everything in your life, whether you like it or not.
mm,
The invitation is, how can you consciously manifest? How can you manifest? And then, like, to go even a level deeper, who's making the decisions, who's driving the car when you're consciously manifesting? Is it someone that's in alignment with your highest good, or is it still your ego that wants instant gratification or pleasure or whatever it is, and not like the sustainable things that want to come through for you? So it's an art, it's a dance. And that for me are, like, I guess the foundational pillars to establish before we even really deeply go into manifestation, which is such a whimsical, fucking magical Harry Potter thing to talk about for me. And it's also very much grounded in the structure of all those other things.
Mm. I think the core of that is really what I heard is this idea of like, one, we're always manifesting. Like, no matter what's in front of us, we are manifesting that. But even deeper than that, it's this idea of like, so the original question was, how does surrender play into manifestation? And what I hear is it's like tapping into the knowing that you are everything. You are all of the power, that this God, this source, this energy, it's not outside of you. It is you. Like, it doesn't exist separately from you. And so being able to surrender into that and say, oh, and this is like similar. I don't have the knowledge base or the understanding to go into like a deep religious conversation about this and the Bible and Jesus and all of this. But one line that has really stuck out for me this year is this idea that Jesus said, I think it was Jesus that said this, but the kingdom of heaven is already within you. It is within you. Oh, and it's literally just, oh, and then open up and receive that kingdom. We want all the money and the impact and the fame and the luxury and the this and the that and the relationships. Open up and receive it. It's yours. All the amazing, most amazing things that you want, they're already yours. And it's literally just that twist of like, oh, they're mine. And loving that and feeling gratitude for that and just focusing on that. And then suddenly you start seeing those things. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, I start seeing those. And then you start really tapping into that creative power because now you've started bringing it into like your actual day-to-day identity and operations and how you're moving. And this is really interesting because similar to you, is like a few years ago, you talk about God, energy, source. I was like, ugh. Like, I don't even want to go near that. I would like listen to that person and just think like, how are they missing this? How do they really believe in God? What, like, how do you really think that we're biological creatures? We're on this earth. We've gone through evolution. Like, that's it. And now I'm like, oh shit. Okay. That is like I was the one completely missing that. And now it's like the most important thing in my life to really work on building a relationship with, because I realize like that's where all of this beauty really lies. And it's just seeing that and understanding it. And so what's interesting is you started talking about how like that's a foundational principle, understanding this, like, first thing. How do you go about helping people like understand that and really believe it? Because it was a strong held belief in my own life. And so, I can sit here and talk about this to even like my clients or people I'm working with. And, some people might really push back and hear and like just be a little unsure. So I'm curious, like, how do you approach that when you're helping someone to connect with this?
I love that. Yeah. So the first thing that comes through is another one of my gifts that I'm just seeing as a gift. It's always been who I've been, and just recently I've actually seen it as a gift. And I kind of call myself this like interdimensional translator. So
Mm,
I have this gift of taking concepts that may be perceived as like beyond like understanding, and then making them very palatable for the person that I'm talking to, which is also an exercise in receiving, because I talk to a bunch of different types of people in different layers of their journey, which I'll go into. And for me, the most important thing as I'm navigating this is, who am I talking to and who's on the other end of the conversation and what's true for them in this moment. So
mm,
I have a very concrete set of beliefs that have changed a lot over time. And one of them is, you know, and I'll share maybe several, but one of them that comes through that I used to think that love, like what love was, especially in a connection or in a conversation, was kindness. I used to think there were synonyms, right? So if I'm talking to someone who's like, yeah, I just think that, and this is, I'll be crude for the sake of the example, but I'm like, I just like murdering people, you know. There was a
Mm,
version of me that thought love was to be like, okay, yeah, you know, I can see how murdering people could, like, you could get your rage out that way, you know, and I would be like that
mhm,
kind of person. And I learned that what love with a capital L actually is confrontational and is about maintaining truth. And so a part of my journey I think you mentioned people pleasing maybe, but part of
mhm,
my journey was definitely people pleasing. Um, Having myself see in what rooms I would still be like, yeah, murdering's cool, versus like, actually, okay, I can see how that's something that matters to you. Have you considered this? Right?
mhm,
So understanding that the love, which for the sake of what we're talking about, the love of source and God and this otherworldly interdimensional perspective that you and I are navigating how to put in like layperson language for our
mhm,
clients and the people we
mhm,
support, it comes from first understanding that we get to be grounded in knowing it. So I
mhm,
guess just speaking from my own embodiment, knowing it as truth intellectually, and then embodying that my invitation is that independent of who I'm talking to and where they are in their beliefs, I will not waver. And
mhm,
I don't mean that to say, and there's so many examples that I could share of this because I have very close people in my life and family members who don't believe in God straight up. And I can
mhm,
tell you how I navigate that. And at first of it, it like is to, and I invite anyone who's listening to take this if it resonates, is to not let that other person's perspective waver you off yours. Like whether
mhm,
the person that I'm talking to believes in God, doesn't believe in God, will never ever shake the fact that I do, and that it
mhm,
is the most beautiful and important relationship in my personal life. And I'm also not going to sit in this conversation because it has to be yours, you know, like, and until you believe, you know, like, you know, and that isn't necessarily the right way either. Because going back to the interdimensional translator, I never consider the person that I'm talking to in any instance on the other side of the table.
mhm,
Unless I'm in like a university setting and I'm in a debate class and we're like, this container is a debate and here's the topic and here's the rules and the agreements, right? It's like we're the same. And how quickly, efficiently, consistently, and with the most alignment can I build a bridge between you and I?
mhm,
This happens with people that I talk to that have different religions. And so you know, and things that are navigating right now as we're live recording this is 2023, and there's active wars going on in the world, and we can tag into that and whatever. And it's like people very much still believe that there's another side of the table and there's other, right? And that separation energy. So it's like the way I navigate any of those conversations is like, how can I bring this person who is very deliberate in their separation story? How
mhm,
can I show them that number one, I fucking love them because
mhm,
I've been there and I've been there so deeply, you know, in so many ways.
mhm,
I've thought everything and everyone was against me, including myself. And I'm still catching places where I do. So knowing that the person that I'm talking to is also me, right? And we
mhm,
can get meta with it. And as I navigate the conversation, I think the easiest way to do it is to just ask questions, right? So,
mhm,
what does that mean for you? And especially, um, predominantly as this comes through me in another person, I've had people who are very science, like the pragmatic type of embodied people who are like, okay, but show me the proof, um, types of people. And I love that and I honor that and I respect that. And I also know, as someone who loves science, study science, I nerd out and I can get real like into that convo. Quantum
mhm,
physics is something that I infuse into all the things that I teach, and I do my best to make it fun, you know, like, and
mhm,
interesting and exciting. If you think about what science is as an industry or a container in and of itself, science is the process of studying what's already fucking happened.
mhm,
As far back as science goes, it's like this happened. What the fuck? Did you see that?
mhm,
How the fuck? Okay, but if I want to do this, how would I? Or like if you even think of history, and we can trace this throughout history, and I love to bring this example up to my clients and on the pod, like we're in 2023, we take planes, we take flights. There was a time not so long ago, a couple generations back, we didn't have any fucking planes. And
Hmm.
we're like, you and me, Ben and Zoe are on the chariot, and somebody's like, hey, Ben and Zoe, I'm gonna make this metal can that shoots up in the sky, and then we'll get over on the other, and we will look at that person and be like, you're off your rocker,
Hmm.
Steve, or whatever kind of like 1800s name, Charles. Like, you are off your fucking rocker. And that person, what happened? They were just deliberate enough in their belief where they're like, I'm going to make the science bend to this, which is what the quantum is, if we want to go there.
Hmm.
That's usually where I take the conversation to kind of finish answering your question.
Hmm.
That's usually where I take the conversation, if they're very deliberate in the sciences, into the quantum realm, which is just a realm within where we are right now, where there's a whole new set of rules. And had I
Hmm.
not understood this, I wouldn't have created the life that I created and continue to create. And that's where manifestation is, because science, religion, spirituality, manifestation, God, if you're listening to this through my belief, it's all the same fucking thing.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of called, if you have the space before I give it back to you, to tell a little story that I tell, and it's not from me, it's a parable, and I'll butcher it, but it's like, to the extent, I think it was like a monk or somebody, he's sitting with some kind of prodigy. I definitely don't have the citations for this one, science people, if you're listening. Someone said at some point to somebody else that I was like, don't know who it was, that there, let's say there's three monks that come in that are like his prodigies, and he's like, I'm going to send each one of you guys into this dark room. You're going to touch a physical object that I have in there. You're going to come back out, and you're going to tell me what that experience was for you, and what you touched. Sends in monk number one. He goes in, it's dark in there, he's blindfolded, he can't see it, he's just touching it. He's like, all right, cool, it is warm and stiff and like different types of materials. All right. And he comes out, tells the dude, he's like, cool, next. The next one goes in, blindfolded, darkness. He goes in, he touches it. He's like, it's like kind of long and ropey and like coarse. All right. And then the next one goes in, same thing. He touches it and he's like, it's kind of like soft and has some coldness to it. And he comes out, right? And it's like every single one of them describe their perception of
Hmm.
touching a fucking elephant,
Hmm.
right? It's the same object. It's the same object for everyone. We're just describing it based on our own perspectives. So
Hmm.
that's what came through there on that one.
Yeah. I love this, and I think like that story kind of it ties a really nice bow on it, which is like really this idea that like although I do believe we're all one consciousness expressing through different characters, in that we're expressing through these different characters. This character is unique. Like this character of Ben is not the same character as Zoe, and it's not supposed to be, right? And so I think when we approach this conversation of like of a higher power, of something like when we start talking about the unseen space, it's like really honoring like the way that that person sees their reality and is experiencing it, because it we're all experiencing the exact same reality, but we're just experiencing it in a different way. And so rather than try to force the way that I see it onto someone, it's like understand the way that they see reality, and then like use this intuitive guidance to ask questions and share perspectives in which have served you really well in this reality and your own growth experience, and just like plant little seeds and not try to like force it. Oh, you got to believe this. Trust me. Like this is going to be everything. Because like how do we react when someone's like telling us to do something? Like you have to believe it this way. The ego's natural response is like, and for anyone that's just listening and not seeing this, like I'm contracting, I'm tightening up. And so as we do that, that ego is only going to build more of a kind of little protective mechanism around now that belief. And this is all happening really subconsciously. But so it's like, how powerful is it just to love someone and love the way that they're seeing reality, and just love them enough with the capital the capital L. I was gonna say S, I don't know why. The capital L, to then like shake things up a little bit and tell them some of that hard truth that needs to be shared, but in a way that's not like you're wrong, see it this way. Just like, oh, what if we saw it this way? What if we just stepped to this side of the box and we looked at the box from this perspective? Oh, and then all of a sudden you start to see the wheels turn and the seeds get planted. And then as we have those conversations, their consciousness is more aligning with that. They're starting to welcome that in just a little bit. Then things start happening in their life. Oh, I just met the exact person we were talking about last week on the call. Oh, huh. Surprise, right? And just being able to help reinforce some of those things and start to see it in our day-to-day experience, because I think that's where it becomes so difficult. We're talking about the unseen here. And yet it's really the seen, because it's like when I'm looking at you, I'm seeing God in and of itself, right? I'm seeing source. When I'm looking at this mouse, I'm seeing that, but we don't realize like it's like the unseen essence of it. And so how can we start to look in our life and see the physical things around us and start to correlate? Oh, I was just asking for that. Oh, I was just thinking about that. Oh, right. And even the sometimes negative things. I was like, we're focused on the worst outcome, and all of a sudden we get the worst outcome. Huh. Interesting. Seems like something's always listening. So I think that it's super important to just like meet people where they're at with a service mindset and just love them so much and like let them feel so safe in where they're at, that like there's like almost no other way, like God source comes into that conversation without you having to do anything. It comes in the essence of love and safety. And man, it's so beautiful. Like you said this earlier of like being held in that, I think is what you said, like allowing yourself to just really be held in this something that's greater than us, because we get so in our head, like, oh, look at this and this and this. It's just like, man, I can even just explore giving that up. Like, let me just explore it. Even if I don't believe it, I'm just gonna explore. That sounds nice, taking some weight off my shoulders. And then as we do that, like we just start getting more into a flow with life. And there's been something that I've really been leaning into a lot, a lot, a lot. So on this topic of manifesting, because I think that this is really exciting, and I want to tie this into the thing that I talk about the most, which is the idea of confidence. To me, in order to really like in order to truly like step into our full manifesting presence and power, like to me, like confidence is so intertwined with that. And they're like a very similar process. Because if I'm not confident in myself or my abilities, I'm not like, am I going to manifest? And so like that, I guess that would be my first question is like someone comes to you and they're not feeling like confident in themselves or their ability to manifest. Um, how do you think that's going to impact their own manifestation and the things that they want to bring into their life?
I love it. And it's such a beautiful journey. And for the sake of, let's say somebody approaches me like that, the first thing I would remind them is that you're manifesting 100% of the time. Like this is
Mm,
kind of the doorway into the conscious creator conversation, which I'll move us into is or feel us into rather, because it's understanding that you are manifesting 100% of the time. And that pill goes down different for everyone. You know what I mean? Like I know it
yeah.
went down for me. I fought that shit for years because
Mm,
for me in my own process to accept that would be, oh, that means I have to take responsibility for my fucking life. That means I have to give up blaming. And when I tell you that I was a professional, before I was a professional anything, I was a professional fucking blamer and a
mm,
professional victim and a professional outsourcer and a professional helpless. Like oh, somebody else will do it kind of a person. And so for me to have to hear it, which again was my process, I would hear it intellectually, the idea of, okay, you're creating this. And then to really deeply understand it was so jarring for me because I'm like, I see it as a visual. And as we know, clearly Zoe is a visual and sees in visions. And this is how I teach my clients. If they come to me and they're inside of a car, and always for the sake of it, this cover, it's always a Tesla. I don't know what that
Mhm.
means to anyone. Maybe if that means something to you guys, but like it's always a Tesla. So if like you and me, we'll say it's Zoe, and Zoe's in a Tesla, and Zoe comes to capital Z Zoe as a coach, being like, hey, I don't know if I can even manifest. I don't really feel that confident. And Zoe as a coach says, well, you're creating everything you want, right? Visually within the Tesla, what you've just asked me to do, higher coach Zoe, is to take myself from the passenger seat to the driver's seat. And it's super cozy in the passenger seat.
Mm,
The fucking seat warmers are on. I can control the music like somebody else is driving, and it's this, and part of what is my career and to be a facilitator is to hold people through the transition of that. Some people, it's like, oh yeah, cool, here we go, whoop, and they just go over to the
mm,
front seat and they're like, we're going to the mall or like whatever. Some people
mm,
are like fighting it like how I was. um and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of holding that unwavering, whether somebody's like, well, because usually what comes out if you're navigating this conversation, listening to this, you'll still find little rooms, places in your life where you're blaming, right?
mm,
So, well, my dad, my parents, especially if you're conscious, if you follow Ben and I, you most likely have been doing work for some period of time, whatever kind of fucking work. So, mom did this, dad did this, sister did this, da da da. It's easy for you to say that kind of shit, right? I know that I got this from there. But what's new for you is now to be like, oh my God. And now it's on me to
mm,
unravel that and to get ready for this kicker, right? This, as if I haven't, right? I operate from the school of belief that you choose your parents. So that was
mm,
another one for me that I would literally flip this fucking table and walk out of the room if you told me that. Cause I'm like, what? I would never choose that. And
mm,
that's usually, it kind of goes through cycles when people first hear this awareness. And so I invite you as you're navigating this conversation to give yourself compassion with whatever comes up in your nervous system, whether you're really excited about it, you're fucking terrified, you have a bunch of anger and resentment and questions about it. Like it's all sacred. And we're navigating you, and this is the process of me kind of how people find me and where they integrate in my journey. And then I can shed on if they actually become a client is to what extent they're like open to receiving that they're actually in the driver's seat now. Because if somebody is like, actually, I'm in the passenger seat, like that's for me in my business, not someone who will end up being a client with me. There's just not a
mm.
resonance that will move forward, because I'm not going to sit here and be like, get in the driver's seat. Like, it's just not the life will take you there. However, it has to take you there, whether it's you manifest, and I'm going to get more speaking, like you can manifest car accidents. I have. You manifest illness, you manifest symptoms in your body, you manifest whatever. And so life will continue to invite you into the driver's seat, whether you choose to get out and go over there or whether you're going to take the bumpier way to get there, you're going to end up there. So usually, and how I navigate the conversation is that people will be very curious about, like, what does it all mean? I usually have a lot of
Mm,
questions like what does it mean, and like what does it mean to be a driver? So as it goes through the realm of confidence for me, and where that would kind of come into this conversation at this point, is understanding, and I can speak into my own journey with confidence, is the way that I used to believe, the way that I used to perceive confidence was this boisterous, like,
mm,
I have it all together. I'm pretty. I'm smart. I got money. I got it going on. Woo woo. That for me was confidence, and I see now. We can talk about the healthy form of that in a second, but I can see now who I was. That was misaligned because that was me desperately seeking validation,
mm,
desperate, because I did not feel like a whole person. And so now, if you, whether you're seeing me, hearing me, have any kind of resonance with me, and if you were to pick up on the confidence that I exude and radiate, it's because I've shifted what confidence means from, the overcompensating energy into what it truly means for me, which is vulnerability.
mm,
And vulnerability was never confidence for me. If you remember the beginning, how I opened the combo, I'm like, surrender, like to my
Mhm.
emotions and then like to show you them, like, and you would see them. Like there was to be like my shoulders go up as I play this role, this character, because I'm like,
Mm.
it's not safe, vulnerable. Even the word vulnerable in this collective age time space is like to be punctured by someone's sword. Like it has that like connotation. So that's how I was. And then shifting confidence to actually equal vulnerability. And it's like, how deeply can I get in my
Mm.
own process as I come home to my manifesting power? Because sometimes it's easy and magnetic and I get the yacht, and sometimes I hurt and I manifest the car accident, which is a true story that happened to me, right? And pretty
Mhm.
much everything I say is because it happened to me and I'm sharing how I navigated it. So,
Mm.
lastly, on the nature of vulnerability, just 3 or 4 days ago, I was out of town at like it's called an expansion. It's not a retreat. It's like intensive personal growth workshop, and we do a
Mm.
lot of like emotional processing there, and we do it in a group, like kind of if you imagine a ceremony, but it's in a group. And one of the emotional processes that we navigated, what came up for me was tremendous sadness, tremendous
Mm.
tremendous sadness. And I am very open about my journey with that. I have decades of depression under my belt and all that jazz, right? And then my relationship with my own sadness, the shame I have about my own sadness, and then being in a container over the past weekend where I literally, all this sad energy came up, and I was it just came out of me in this like grief wail cry. And it just, every version of me that would have been literally terrified to not only cry in general, I was on antidepressants so I didn't have to cry, but to be seen crying by
Mm.
people that I didn't even necessarily know. That for me is like you asked me to just go into like fucking battlefield in Game of Thrones. Like,
Mm. Mhm.
you had told me that's where I was going to go, but now seeing that the person who left that experience has a new depth of embodiment and confidence due to the vulnerability of that experience, if that
Mm.
makes sense. And so that plays into manifestation, because you're manifesting nonstop. And the more that you can allow yourself to be honest first with yourself and then to be seen in it, the more you actually have a greater command of the things that you're manifesting. And then you're manifesting them from alignment. You're not just, manifesting a yacht to have a yacht, even though that's nice. I've done it. It's totally possible you can. You'll end up like how I was in the beginning of the story, where you're like, why is everything still hurt everywhere? Oh,
Mm.
I was doing this because I wanted people to think I was impressive, not because I actually wanted to experience the richness of life, because I think wealth
Mm.
is also cool and something to be celebrated.
Mm. I think it's so interesting because it was like both sides of that. Okay, weren't feeling like this true sense of confidence. You were feeling more, and you didn't really realize it at the time. It sounds like when it was, oh, look at me, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. Like that wasn't real confidence. At least you reflect back and recognize that now. That was actually deep insecurity, then trying to get things in order to feel this confidence. And yet you were still able to manifest the yacht from that space. And now what you've really found is that true confidence is more of this vulnerability. And so what is that difference like between like not feeling this sense of confidence in yourself and manifesting the yacht, and then feeling the sense of confidence in yourself and manifesting whatever it is that you're manifesting now? Like what's the difference in that life now that you're living?
I'm smiling also as you said that, because internally in my head, as I was listening, there was a voice that went, "It's still a yacht."
Mm.
And that's a beautiful part of where I'll take, this question, because what came up initially was it's two different feeling tones in my body. So the version of me who, and I close my eyes so I can tap into who she was. And maybe if you're listening, you have a certain, I teach our identities are like outfits. So
Mm.
that identity, that outfit that I was wearing, where I had my insecurity and I was manifesting the yacht and I wasn't truly confident, she had a very particular set of feelings inside of her. Like she was a character, she was an identity, she was an outfit. Like maybe she had
Mm.
long blue sleeves, and she would have this success in manifesting the yacht. And then as she manifested the yacht, she would still be viscerally aware of this feeling like something was missing, which was a
Mm,
huge clue that I wasn't at the level of awakening that I am to consciously understand it in this moment. But that feeling of like emptiness, of like this hit, right? Because you're like, okay, I did it. It's like there's the Disney Channel when they tap the fucking wand, they're like, ooh, do do do, and they draw the little do welcome to Disney Channel. Like
mm.
you made it,
Yeah.
right? And then I would feel that hit, like maybe it was like that dopamine. It just there was this feeling of like it didn't feel like all there was. There was more.
Mm,
And the process of being in who I am now, and this actually is, getting into a conversation of wealth, and at least in my own journey and how I've navigated that, because that had a lot of, and as it does, like I just said, I just wrapped Money Club, and I literally had a container full of 10 different types of people who had their different money stories. And
mm,
so for me, I had to face all the things that I felt about money and material possessions and what it meant about me. And then, especially becoming more spiritual, I had a moment of renouncing all of that and rejecting that and being like, oh, Zoe, you're still materialistic. And so from point A of that identity, that role, into point B, there was this growth and self-examination that came as a process, right, into who I am now, who I'll tell you about. But this process of understanding that what the fullness is that I was looking for through the things that I would physically materialize
mm,
wasn't to come from the process of that. If that makes sense.
mm, mm.
What I
Yeah.
was searching for by being like, aha, see, I did it. A manifestation, Basil, I've done it. Like what I was searching for through that wasn't what the process was.
Mm,
And so it was like having a skill defined, but not having the most aligned way of using and navigating it. And so the journey from point A to point B was first being fucking observant of that, and it came with a tremendous amount of judgment. That's another part of
mm,
my story. I had, and it like still kind of shows up in different ways, but not as loud as it was before, a tremendous inner critic, a tremendous judge who
mm,
would condemn me. It was a part of my identity. It was like another version of me. And so this process navigating from A to B and having my judge um really be like, renouncing this, like, you're so vain and materialistic and obsessed, and I got all sorts of Botox, and then I would beat myself up about it, and there was a lot of shame, right, of that, into
mm,
the education that I kind of had. It'll sound simplistic because it is, and it's also complex work of learning compassion and learning the actual true design of manifestation. So
mm,
when you learn this art of manifestation, because it is an art, anybody can pretty much understand it and teach it. But it's like when you embody why you're actually here, which is much deeper than just manifesting a fucking yacht. It's to
mm,
fully liberate your soul and express all versions of you and share your gifts. When you connect
mm,
that with the manifestation, you're not manifesting from an empty place. You're not
mm,
manifesting from an empty cup. And this was, spoiler alert, one of the lessons that I also taught in Money Club. I taught this container as a give, receive, because the energy of money is bi-directional. You give money and you.
mm,
So in the give chapter, I was talking about what you choose to invest in. And I had a
mm,
lot of questions about, okay, well, I am a giver, right? Or I'm a people pleaser and I give a lot and I feel really drained after. And it's like, okay, because the things that you are giving, right, where are they coming from? Are they
mm,
coming from your fullness? Because maybe you can relate to this when you teach, or when I teach at least, that shit lights me up so magnetically. I'll be like, I could do 10 calls and I'm like, after,
mm,
because it just comes from a full cup. It comes
mm,
from a full cup that's receptive to the source wisdom and then shares the gifts, if that makes
mm,
sense. So to kind of tie this up with a bow into who I am now, who has the same capacity, honestly, a greater capacity of manifestation, because I just have a deeper awareness of what it actually means.
mm,
I still manifest the yachts. And I've forgiven myself for this very common belief that especially when we navigate personal development and spirituality, it's like I have to renounce possessions now, because at the end of the day, we're all unity consciousness, and I'm still meeting that within myself. And it's like,
Mm,
it's okay to have nice things. It's also
mm,
fucking part of life, especially if you're listening to this in a female embodiment, where part of our design is to just explore everything and how it feels
mm,
and how it looks and how it tastes. And like, of course, we're attracted to like the shiniest purse and like the most Michelin star meal, because we're like, do you see how that dinner is floating in a snow globe with like shaved marshmallows that are holographic? Like, of
mm,
course we're gonna fucking love that. And that's
mm,
okay. So it's allowing for forgiveness, compassion. And I think the loudest thing that I'm saying throughout this whole thing is increasing the capacity of what the truth of the situation is, like what
mm,
manifestation actually is. It gets people in because they're like, okay, so he's going to teach me how to get a yacht. I can't, I will, I do fucking professionally. And I'm also not going to let you go that easily if you think that you're going to get at the end of this is a fucking yacht, because it's
mm,
way more than that. It's like, how deeply can you love yourself, and how deeply, when you consciously put yourself in the driver's seat, can you like tap into what you're meant to manifest.
mm, mm. So good. And it's so relevant to even, I mean, even so much in my life, like especially when we start talking about money. Money's an interesting one, right? Because there's so many stories around money that it's like pair with this like neediness of like I need more, and also like the essential like yes, I do like actually in a sense need money to pay my rent, to buy my groceries, to do this and do that. And so it's like it's there's so much power we give to money. And it's interesting because it's like we're giving the power to the money. Like the power's in us, and recognizing and being able to take back that power within ourselves rather than think it's the money that's going to give us all these things. Like it's us, we're the creator, and we get to bring those things into our life. I think a lot of this just really mirrors back to conversations that I have with people that I'm working with in terms of like specific confidence, because a lot of people come in and it's like, oh, I want to be confident. I want to feel like I want to walk into the room and I want to feel like powerful. I want everyone else to feel like I'm the cool one. And I'm like, do you really? Like that sounds pretty exhausting to walk in the room and want everyone to see you a certain way, to see you as confident. Like that sounds exhausting. Now you have to focus on every person and say, do they see me as confident? Do they see me as confident? Versus just like walking into a room and not giving a shit what anyone else thinks. Just walking in and saying, hey, here I am. Here's Ben. Like him, hate him, love him, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. Here I am in all of that fullness. Like to me, that is confidence. And I think like as I hear you talk about the manifesting side, it's like we have the two aspects, like the external things, like the getting these things, and also like the feeling within ourselves, like feeling full. It's like in and of itself, it's like the masculine and the feminine. Like we find that dynamic. And so it's like we can get all of these things, but if I don't feel full inside, what the hell is all of that worth? Like nothing. And so, and I think as we find the balance of both of these, oh, getting these really cool things, like all of the different external things that we desire, and also feeling so full within ourselves, doesn't that game also get a little bit easier? Like you have to focus less on what you want, and these things just flow into your life. Wow, a yacht. Oh my gosh. Wow, $10,000. Wow, an amazing relationship. Like, oh, thank you. Like versus like, oh, I am manifesting this yacht. I am manifesting this relationship. It's just like they just flow in, and it's like, oh, amazing. And so for me, confidence is very, very similar. It's like there's the masculine and the feminine side, and so many people focus on the masculine side of confidence. The show up for yourself, wake up at 5 a.m., like do the cold plunges. Like you have to have self-respect for yourself and trust. 100%. If you can sit here and like walk into a room and be all goofy and feel all comfortable, but you don't trust in your ability to show up consistently and do things, you're not going to be confident in yourself. You're going to feel only an aspect of it. And then likewise, if you feel all that, like, oh yeah, I wake up at 5 a.m. I'm so disciplined. I always do the things I say I'm gonna do. Like, if you're all that, but then you walk into a room and you're like, ooh, like, what do they think of me? Like, ooh, like, am I weird? Am I not good enough? It's like, what the hell is the point of all that self-trust if you can't express yourself authentically? So to me, it's like, how do we mix the two and really tap into this authentic expression and love and just be able to, like, all of this? It's like, I'm not consciously moving my body. It's just an expression of what's happening, and it feels fucking awesome because I don't have to think about it, and it is so natural. And that to me is like what real confidence is. And so I think that the more that we tap into like that aspect of confidence, then too, the more that we're naturally going to manifest things in our life, because now we're tapping into our truth, we're speaking our truth, we're feeling more in alignment, we're doing the things in the 3D realm that are going to help us actually bring that like yacht into our life, or the money into our life. And so this is like, this is then tapping more into like this feminine nature of this like authentic expression, and the ability just to, and that was what I kind of started this out when I was like, anyone who's listening to this in just audio, like, at least clip on the video and just like watch how the both of us are expressing. Specifically, like as you were doing your intro, Zoe, it was just like I could see authentic expression coming out of you, and as you're talking, like the little voices that pop in, it's like I can tell you're not thinking about these things, they're authentically being expressed out of you. And that is so beautiful, and it's so magnetic. So I'd love for you to tap into like, or talk a little bit about like how that plays a role in just, and maybe not even just manifesting specifically, but like how has it played a role in your life to accept more and receive more of like just Zoe outside of, and maybe like it ties into like business and the manifesting and all this, but like just life in general. How is it to be able to express yourself, and how is it that you've really stepped into that?
Ooh. Every version of me that's like confident in myself is like, we are so ready to talk about this.
Yeah.
Oh, so talk about authentic expression. I just start making sounds. Ow! It starts with giving a very loving shout out to my first version of me, who one of my very first chosen operating core beliefs was that it's not safe to be myself. And I
Mm,
say I chose that very deliberately because I believe on the notion of what I was saying earlier, that we choose our parents and we choose them to play out a certain framework of things as we remember who we truly are. This came out in relation to my parental dynamics, where I chose parents who, to a certain degree, or multiple family members where I didn't have, or I chose to not have experiences to learn how to feel safe in relation to the world,
mm,
relation to myself, and how to navigate that. So that was one of the, and when I say core beliefs, that means like everything I built was on that foundation, that the world's not safe and I'm not safe in it, and it's not safe to be me. It was just like fiery, not safe, woo woo, and my journey has been an uncovering of that, a seeing of that, a loving of that. And the process, because pretty much for like 20, over 25, maybe 26 years, I still hadn't seen it. I was living as that embodiment. I was living as that person where I was unsafe, I was blaming other people, I was a victim, not safe to be me. And so, as you can imagine, especially as women who can probably relate to this, given where we are in time, space, and collective, um, I didn't, like, I was operating in my headspace. Everything that came through me, because like, and I now I have my shoulders up again because I was bracing, because my
mm,
core belief is you're not safe. Obviously, your whole body is going to be fucking on all the time. And anything that you contribute in the form of a vocal expression, for the sake of an example, was because like it was a survival mode and it came from your head to like, where's the threat? Minimize. So that was the first version of me. And so it's been this gradual, and my shoulders are softening now.
mm,
That's the perfect word, softening. And, you know, especially I find it to be interesting coming out of like a feminine embodiment where you could put me in the gym and I could lift all this weight and I could do all these, how you were talking about like the masculine, like wake up at 5 a.m. Like that for me, like wasn't even a thought. And if you had told me that I would, like I said, cry in front of people, I had such strong flashbacks because part of my personal journey and my story, and where a lot of clients find me is through my conversation about mental health. And so where I
Mm,
first started to navigate this process was through what I understood at that time as support, which was psychologists and psychiatrists. So therapy, that was one of my earliest modalities. And what they had offered to me as a potential diagnostics was a unlimited supply of depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma. I was on all the different types of like mood stabilizers, anything to like avoid being with myself. And then to make the conscious decision that I actually don't have a diagnosis, I just have to learn how to be present with myself, right? That was, I guess, one of my pivotal breakthroughs in being a person who experienced PTSD. And
mm,
I put it in quotes actually because I don't believe in labels, but that's to give us in this language a similar term, PTSD, what the war veterans have. And then I had guilt
mm,
about it because I'm like, I didn't go to fucking war. I'm pretty privileged. Who the hell am I to be suffering? But how it would happen in my body before I made the shift is I would be driving to a place that I knew very well. I know how like where I was going. And if I were to get stressed about something, I would lose where I was when I was driving, and I would actually get lost at any time of the day because of
mm,
how much fear it brought up to me to be present in the moment and how much unsafety I felt being in the moment. So that was where I was. I didn't see it. And then the process and the journey for me of seeing that, seeing the way that I was acting, seeing how holy fuck it, I haven't shown myself that it's safe to be with me because I have a belief that it's not, into the version of me where I'm like, I'm dedicated to slowly creeping into the reality where it gets safer and safer every day to be with me.
mm,
And to have all of the emotions come through for that. And another breakthrough was when I decided to stop taking antidepressants because I learned that I was masking sadness, and my conscious decision to stop taking all of that shit was because I'm like, if sadness has to come through, I have to let it. I have to show it that it's safe. My dog just barked, amen, amen. Um, like to show myself that it's safe. So that has been my process. And it took this tremendous amount of patience because like I
mm,
mentioned, my inner critic and my inner judge, who was so vicious to me, of like wanting to arrive, like wanting to be where I am now, who I am now, who I now know that I'm always going to be evolving, but she wanted to arrive. She's like, I
mm,
want to get the crying out so that I can be done crying. Like, I just fuck the crying. Just kidding. I gotta cry. Just come on already.
mm,
And transitioning from the shoulder up into this gradual softening, and the voice that I speak to myself at has gone from like, it's not safe and nothing is safe, to being like, okay, I'm going to start to give myself space to feel things, still don't feel present with myself, to now who I am and how I teach, which is like understanding truly that whatever emotion shows up, align, misalign, whatever, that's a fucking version of me, number
mm,
one. So I don't get to talk about that with any kind of disrespect because that's me. And if I were to slander that, that's slandering me. And to allow it to come up and out, to give it the space, because I can choose not to, which we do collectively, right? I can choose not to
mm.
because we think it's just I sweep it under the rug and then I just like won't lift the rug ever. But it's like we'll create it. That's how reality is designed. We will create it because we have to meet it. That's why it's there. If you have to
Mm,
cry, the tears are behind your eyes and you don't feel them, you're showing yourself it's not safe to cry. So what you're hearing and seeing in my embodiment, in my radiance, in my confidence is someone who's very deeply met herself in all of the things,
mm,
and is committed to, and you can hear it in my voice and the way that I show up is like, it's not just like, okay, I cried last weekend, whoo, got that out of the way. It's like, and I'll literally start my day in the mirror, eye to eye, which took me years to even look myself in the fucking eye, but to look at
mm,
be like, whatever you feel today, I fucking got you. You want to cry? We're
mm,
gonna cry. You want to scream? We're gonna scream. We're gonna feel things, and it's safe to feel things, and I'm gonna hold you through it. And that actually rippled out patterns of codependency that I used to have in interpersonal relating, whether it was parents, friends, teachers, relationships where I was codependent because I wouldn't hold myself through my emotions. So I looked to other people. And the more that I started
mm,
to do this work and literally be like, I got you and hold myself through, like sometimes actually like literally, and most
Mhm.
of the time literally, because I love like I love a cutie, kiss my shoulder, right? It's like showing myself that I got me, and then watching that ripple out, and the partners I'm even attracting, because like you were saying earlier, you attracted into you,
Mhm.
are way more sovereign and independent and autonomous because I am. And I don't
Mhm.
need you, which I don't, the word need makes me want to like throw up in my mouth, but like I don't, it's not necessary for me to have someone else hold something that I'm very capable of holding. And I can still
Mhm.
have a tremendous dynamic on that as well. So softening is the word, and then being really patient with every version of me that still to this day is scared of softening. It's like, oh my God, we have
Mhm.
to go even deeper. We just went so deep. We have to go even deeper. Like,
Mhm.
seriously. And then just allowing the loudest voice in my head that comes out of my mouth to be one of compassion. Um, Even the voice towards the judge. And there's one last story that it's like when I started to isolate the critic who had been one of my identities, I was so angry at her because she had the voice of very specific people from my past that are no longer in my present, but I took that voice and now that was like my disciplinary voice and the voice that got things done. And so that voice existed. And so when I was able to look at that voice, I felt a lot of anger, being like, why are you such a bitch to me, man? Like,
Mhm.
oh, if you just weren't here, then I wouldn't. I literally called her. I talk about this on the pod. I call her Angelica from the fucking Rugrats. That's how mean she
Mhm.
was to me. Like I called her
Mhm.
Angelica. That was her name because that's how she talked to me. And then I would just, I'm like, I hate you. And then getting to the point where I'm like, oh my God, this is also me. And she was born from someplace.
Mhm.
And then the way I related to her, instead of being like, fuck you, Angelica, shut up, it's like, I love you. And I know you're acting this way because you're scared and because you think that you have to. And there's a new way now, and I got us. And you don't have to trust me right now, right? You don't have to even like me. You can doubt me because that was her job, right? You can doubt me if you want, and I still got us. And
Mhm.
we're going to talk to each other with respect from here on out, right? So it all starts with how I talk to me. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, oh, but the people around me talk to me like this, or this is showing up in my, how are you relating to you? How are you holding you? How are you responsible for you? And all of this plays out in your manifestation. So I'm glad and I'm excited that we're spending time with this manifestation under the surface, like what it actually
Mhm.
really is to do the work and to have that ripple out into what you want to experience.
Mhm. There was so much gold in all of that. Like like my I was like, oh, we could dive into that or that or that. Like so much, so good. And I think like just like at the end there, getting to this point of like even having compassion for that judge in your ears. Cause it's like there's that part, yeah, it's like I beat myself up and all this. And it's like, I want that gone versus like, oh, wow, how can I love that part of me too? Because it's a part of us. Everything that we are experiencing is a part of ourselves. And if we want to express ourselves, we have to stop blocking ourselves. We have to stop swiping it under the rug, putting it in the box. And it's not easy to go in and open that box. It's like the scariest thing in the world to like right before it's everything's like, no, don't do it, don't do it. And then you finally do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we made it out to be this horrible thing. And then the voice will come in and say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Now they're going to see this or whatever. But you've already started the process. And once that process really gets going, it truly is like the most beautiful journey that we can go on. And I feel really called to like just share this even with your audience and people that are listening. It's like this idea that, well, first, let me get full clarity from you before I make this assumption. Is life better now when like going working through this stuff and expressing yourself than it was before?
Life feels lighter,
Mm.
more authentic, easier, more in flow, more beautiful. The colors are brighter. I feel like I move from my heart. Where in the
Mm.
beginning of that story, I move from my head. It's like it's the most I'm obsessed
Mm.
to put it lightly.
Mm.
That's the
Yeah.
clarity that you were seeking.
Yeah. So For anyone that's listening, that probably sounds pretty amazing. And because oftentimes we live in this little tight kind of box, always feeling stuck, feeling like we're not enough, feeling like we never quite get the thing that we want. We want the money, we want the yacht, but it's never actually coming. And we're in this like tighter space. And like everyone like probably resonates with like, wow, yeah, it'd be nice to feel lighter and more at peace and in flow and from my heart. It's hard to like fully comprehend what that feels like when we're in that state. Like if I think back to myself in my college dorm room and someone told me about this, I'd be like, what? Like, like, fuck you, dude. Like, you don't know what I'm going through. Like, you don't know what I'm feeling. And like, that's you. Like, you're special. You get to do this. And I just, like, one of the greatest things that I ever have done for myself is go on this journey inward, learning about how I create my own reality, how the mind is working, learning how to be vulnerable and step into these things and share things that are uncomfortable sharing. And like, to simplify it like so down, it's like my life is so much fucking better than what it was prior. And yet I have so much gratitude and compassion for all of that. Like you were saying, it's like we chose our parents, we chose this like trauma or whatever to go through. And for so long, I was like condemning my like self and my trauma. Like I was a nice guy, a people pleaser. Like no more, like ugh, gross. So now I'm like, oh, amazing. Thank you for having gone through that, because now I get to serve with such an empathetic heart, and I get to really help people feel safe and feel heard and feel all of that because of that trauma that I had gone through in my own life. And now I get to step into a different part of my power, step into that masculine presence where I can bring that compassion and empathy, and now come in with that like, okay, here's what's going to happen, here's how it's going to go, here's what we're going to build together, and really bring in more of that masculine presence. So like, but tying this all in a loop of what really wanted to come through was just like, for all the people that are listening to this, like, first of all, neither me nor Zoe are any different from you, in the sense like we're equals. We're equals. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're playing different characters in this existence, but like all of this that we're talking about, the lightness, the flow, the manifesting, the confidence, the love, the expression, it's all accessible to you. And the number one thing that truly I wish I knew earlier, and this is like, I have such a weird relationship with talking about this, and I'm learning to work through this one on myself, is investing in myself and like fucking sending it on the person that I've been listening to. I listen to all their podcasts, I read all their books, I watch all their content. Like, great. You're not taking the fullest action that you could to really step into this, because we get in this mode of like, I want to do it myself. I don't need that. Oh, that's a lot of money or this and that. And it's like, oh God, if I could just like take my old self and just like slap him and be like, just get that shit out of your head, take the risk and send it on this person that you've been telling yourself is so helpful to you. Imagine just getting a little step closer to that person and getting to talk with them and getting to get like this deep insights from their lives into yours. It's like, this transformation, it's a journey. It's something that I've committed to for my life. I'm not ever planning to be perfect. I'm always loving that I'm imperfectly perfect and that there's always lessons to learn. But like shit, I could speed up the process of this growth by getting into that circle with at least that mentor, that coach, or that community, or whatever it is. Just like, because it's not just about that space, but it's about the decision that you've made for yourself to say, okay, fuck, like this version of me, fuck, like, and I say that with so much love and compassion, but like the version of me that's scared to take the action, that's sitting there thinking about it, is not the version of you that's going to get you to all the things that you want. You got to take different actions and take like these risky commitments to step out of that shell. And it's similar. It's like looking under the rug or that box in that dark room. Like, I don't want to go there. Ugh. And then you open it and you release, and you start to really feel the lightness that we're talking about. The same thing. Oh, I don't know if I want to invest. I don't know if I'm fully like there. It's a lot of money. And then you do it. It's like the same thing. You open that box and now you really get to step into your power. So I just felt really called to share that, because it's something that I really wish someone would have just like gotten through my head. And yet I also understand that everyone's at their own place in their journey. And this is where it's like the relationship. I I come off as like part of me is like, people are gonna think you're like trying to get them to invest or whatever. And it's like, like, and this is, I can tell it's only going on in my own head as I say that, but it truly is just like one of the greatest acts of self-love is to take action towards yourself, towards the thing that you want to do and keep talking about doing, and just finally just do the damn thing and get a little bit uncomfortable. So I guess with that little like rant that wanted to come through, I'd love to hear your take on like taking like stepping out of that comfort zone a little bit and investing in yourself and how that has played a part in this journey for you.
I love it. And it's so beautifully timed because I just graduated my Money Club container today, which was a creator. Yes, a container and a creator. A container that I created to allow people to better navigate this exact conversation. And
Mm,
one of the lessons I shared on that, which I'm going to at some point have be its own course, but I have different offerings on the docket right now. But one of the things that I shared was something I very firmly believe, which is that absolutely everything is an investment.
mm,
Everything's an investment. It's like if you want to go into foundational principles, and I have many, right? It's like everything is an investment. Everything's an investment. Right now, whether you put money towards something or don't, whoever's listening to this, whether you watch a movie tonight or don't, whether you have this for dinner or that for dinner, you, in the nature of being in the driver's seat, being the creator, being the manifester, being the one who makes your life, you get to choose. You're given the gift of choice of
mm,
what you will invest in. And with that comes the responsibility piece of every single thing that you invest in, whether it's the pizza or the salad, and it's so beyond nutrition, but just for the sake of the example, everything you invest in will have a return.
mm,
Everything you invest in will have a return. And that you can also remember that for manifestation, which is partly how I teach manifestation. Everything that you invest in is going to have a return. So we get to play a game called looking at our fucking returns, being really honest and saying, are these returns expansive for me? Is this aligned with what I want? Am I cool with this? Is this settling? Am I shrinking here? I just had this dessert and now I want to throw up, or like, yeah, I could keep playing it out like this. And like, now I can bring the conversation directly into investing in mentorship because for me, it's never a question of can we do it by ourselves? We already established we're conscious creators, we're sovereign, you can do absolutely fucking anything you want
mm,
ever, period, point blank, yeah, end of the conversation. And you don't have to. And so
mm,
I think, the creator that you and I have created, Ben, it sounds like we're both people who have made decisions to invest in, from my perception, every investment I've made in a mentor or a coach has been someone who I've perceived has either a skill or an awareness, something that is of value to me. And I've made investments that have, like, and now I'm talking financially, I've made financial investments in mentors that have felt very aligned. I've made investments that have felt misaligned, and then I've met that energy in myself. Why did I make this investment? Because first I wanted to blame, and then meeting it within myself. And then the most powerful thing that wants to come through when it comes to investing in mentors is when you invest in a mentor from the heart space, which is
mm,
the highest returns I've ever gotten on investments. And yes, I mean financially, but I also mean holistically, the whole picture, the highest
mm,
returns in every way in my growth, in you hearing the person I am today, is because I was in contact with someone's resonance, whether it was them in person, hearing them, like vibing with their aesthetic, whatever it was, and something in my heart in that
mm,
space beyond like logical reason, right? Was like, this expression of human has something to show me. My soul was like this.
mm,
And, one of my absolute favorite mentors, and this will, kind of piggyback and compound on what you were saying, is like, I did sessions with him for like a long time. Like it was like a consistent package that I invested in. Just in one of those sessions, and they were pretty long sessions, just in one of those sessions, he made a comment, like he strung some words together based on his embodiment, his awareness. And maybe the sentence that he spoke was like 5 to 10 seconds. That sentence saved me years of my
Mm,
fucking life that I would have been in. I probably would have married somebody who I had no business marrying, like gone in that kind of direction. That just from that nugget.
mm,
Like if I was in a, I want to cry about it, but I'm just so in reverence to that because I'm so
mm,
grateful for that, and to be in the capacity where you and I are in this conversation. We don't know where what you just shared probably maybe broke 3 people open, or 20 people, or 100
mm,
people. Just those 3 words that we string together. So it's like when you give yourself permission to follow the heart and the soul and this voice that maybe, if you're like me, is my operating voice now, or maybe if you're like an old version of me, it's like more of a whisper, right? And it's like,
mm,
but the more you can give yourself permission to listen to that voice, that's the voice that expands you. Not because
mm,
it's separate from your own, but because that voice has some truth in it that's being reflected back because it's also you, you know?
mm,
So I'm all for mentorship. I'm all for investing. I've gone through phases of not doing any investments in anyone, having multiple types of coaches. I love having mentors in different arenas of things. I've come back into dance. And so, like, I have like a salsa instructor, and I'm all about it. And I also
mm,
think that I could teach myself certain things, but it's like,
mm,
even my salsa teacher, would I have accelerated to the skill level that I'm at now, even just after 2 fucking classes? Because this man is like, you know,
mm,
like best in the world. Like the power of investing consciously and financially, because I think that's a cool place also to navigate a convo. Like the energy of value exchange and financial exchange and putting money towards yourself is so powerful. And especially if you're listening to this and you're any kind of coach, facilitator, mentor, service provider yourself, when you show yourself that you can do that.
mm,
And then my dog's again like, yeah, amen. I love you, baby. He always pops up on the podcast. When you show yourself you can, you're giving yourself real-time embodiment screenshots that will assist you in navigating someone else who's coming to you for your services, who doesn't necessarily know if like now's the right time. And you can
mm,
also manifest, which I like to do, like just having the people, when they invest in you, they just know.
mm,
No, they're like, it's you. And that I
mm,
don't need any kind of like pitch or anything. Like, here's the money. Here it is. It's you. That's definitely been the best investments I've made in mentors, being like this certainty that is beyond all doubt.
mm,
Like this is there's growth for me there. And this has actually become a way that I've made a lot of the decisions in my life. It's how I started my company. I followed the path, quote unquote. I had a corporate job and I followed the rules, 9 to 5, and da 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 da. And then the whisper voice was like, "You're gonna be a personal trainer, like a fitness trainer." And I looked at it from my mind and I was like, "What the fuck is this voice? No,
mm,
like that doesn't make sense. I have this great career, blah blah." And then I just took the leap and I just did it.
mm,
I was like, "This is a whisper," and I done it. And now I'm here because
mm,
personal trainer became mindset coach before I even knew what the fuck that was, into whatever I am now. Manifestation mentor. The words are starting to like not hold the capacity of the career, and that's cool too. And
mm,
when you allow yourself, you give yourself permission to live into the magic, not just because you listen to one conversation, but because you actually take the steps. Like, okay, I will become a personal trainer, or I will invest in this coach, or now I'm in a level of my life where I get visions, like the visions that I have for class. It'll be like, okay, I mean, you're gonna make momentum, and I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna make momentum. We're gonna figure it out what it means when we get there, but that's the next step. And so just
mm,
focusing on the next step of the staircase um is how I've gotten me to here, and allowing
mm,
the voice that makes that decision to be your higher self. And that's
mm,
that calm, excited, trusting voice, you know.
mm. Yeah. What came through right there was like when you said the next step, it was like you get the choice to make the next step. It's like the same thing when you're, I don't know, what's an example of this? Maybe like an airport's probably a decent example. Like you go up and there's two options, the staircase and the escalator. Well, if we're talking like in the moment, if you're actually like walking, probably take the staircase because that's probably going to be better for you physically. But it's like it all depends though, because if you have the staircase and you've got the suitcase that's with you, you probably don't want to take this staircase. You want to hop on the elevator. It's going to be a little bit easier. It's like the same thing. Like we get the choice. Which one am I going to step on? You can go through this yourself and take that like luggage and all the things that you've been struggling with and the old identities and the I'm going to read this book and listen to that podcast and go on that YouTube video and like take all your shit with you and climb all the way up. You've got all the power to do that. I've done that. Or it's like you could take it all and then just step on the staircase and then just ride that wave up. And that for me is like when I kind of picture investing in myself. It's like which one do I want? Do I want it to take less time and be easier? Yeah, sure. Am I saying it's going to be easy? No, not necessarily. But that was just something that came through and just like an image that all of a sudden, because we're all different learners, right? Train of thought is coming back. I think something that is really important that you touched on is like following this inner voice, that inner guidance, like that inner feeling, especially as women, because you probably have a lot of women that are your audience is probably primarily women, right? And I think like that is one of the most the one of the strongest aspects of the feminine energy is that deep inner, like the feeling, that inner knowing, that intuitive sense where like a lot of women would then we learn to like mash that down, right? And go with like whatever society says, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, versus like, man, the woman, one of the greatest gifts of a woman is to feel and is to be able to flow in that. And I think it's interesting. And so I'm actually curious like how your relationship with this has been, because I definitely have a strong feminine energy within myself, and my like ability to feel is definitely a gift in my intuition, and that's a strong part of that feminine energy. Shout out like growing up with in between two sisters, an amazing mom, and all of that, and whatever gifts I've been given and chosen. But for me, the way that I've really taught this to the people that I'm working with as well is like we have this inner guidance system that's always guiding us, and that is that intuition. That is this internal like gut feeling that we talk about. Like you feel it in your gut. That's the guidance system that's like pointing us north towards, say, our North Star, towards our vision. And like that guidance system doesn't necessarily know like, oh, it's your purpose is like this house or this car or this relationship. Like it doesn't really know the specifics. It just knows that like it's guiding you towards your greatness, your genius, your like expression of love in this life. And so it's like just trusting that, oh, I feel that gut feeling. Oh, but this is going to give me this thing or this thing. Like trust that. But for me, what I've always noticed is that then I have this equal kind of counterpart that points south. And like I keep using my hands here for people that are watching. I'm just pointing kind of north and south, but it's like this equal counterpoint that points south, which is like this little inner critic, this fear that's like, no, don't do that, like you're not supposed to do that. And so like a great example for me is when I quit my 9 to 5 a year and a half ago. It was like I had this inner knowing that was you can't explain it to anyone for them to fully get it, and I had to learn how I didn't need to explain it. It's funny, right? That explainer. Ooh, please understand this. They don't have to. They don't have to understand. You have an inner knowing, like that is there for a fucking reason. That is your guidepost leading you towards this thing. And then I had this voice of like, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if I'm wrong? What if my parents are right? Should I work a little bit longer, secure myself for a resume in case this doesn't work? Like you all of this, all that noise that was still there, but it was like, what I learned is that like, they're both guiding me. The one intuitive feeling is guiding me to exactly where I'm supposed to go. And that fear is guiding me essentially like take the opposite of that. Oh, if I'm afraid to do this thing, it's exactly the thing that I fucking need to do. It's exactly the thing, whether it's the right choice or not. The fact that I feel that fear and that I recognize that fear is not truth, fear is the opposite polarity in a sense of love. Great. I'm feeling that fear towards this thing. I must face that so I can transmute that fear into love. Whether this is a failure, whether I quit my job and it all doesn't work out or not, I've now said, oh, I feel you, fear, and I leaned into it. So now I'm not controlled by that lower, essentially the lower level of consciousness. I've transmuted it and accepted that feeling. I said, okay, fear, let's dance. And by dancing with it, it naturally turns into love. And I get to take all of the things all the lessons from that failure and take it and grow from that. And so I'm curious, like that's how I teach it. And I work with a lot more men. So I don't know if maybe, in that feminine energy, you find that there's not as much of that and you're really smoothly guided with that. But for the people that I work with, oftentimes I'm helping them connect with this intuition that for me, it's a little bit easier. But for a lot of men that I work with, it's like, what is that? So I'm curious, how does that show up in you and your feminine essence?
I love it. I love it. And I love the visual that you gave with the hands, one pointing up and one pointing down.
Mm,
I love a visual.
mm,
And I definitely work with men and women,
mm,
right? So the way I teach with both, I intentionally and deliberately it's a little bit different just in the nature of polarity and kind of how you and I have been navigating this conversation. Um, there's a different way that I teach with men and with women in terms of being in the actual connection and the mentorship dynamic, like that relational dynamic. As it comes to what we're talking about, like the content of the combo, I very much teach first the foundational principles. So I think what you're referring to as when you had your hand up and that intuitive, that inner guidance system, for me, it's having each one of my clients, whether it's group or individual, understand the nature of truth, capital T truth, as I perceive it, as I
mm,
define it, as it's allowed me to shape my life and really step into my liberation through safety and inspiration and excitement and happiness and fulfillment, which is huge, and reconnecting to my soul. So understanding foundational principles of truth, kind of like I touched on and I continue to touch on, which is that energy is always here, right? That it's supporting you, it's applicable to everyone. So there's certain little pieces of it in my framework for understanding truth as it comes along the beautiful way that I teach getting to know yourself. So if let's say I have a one-on-one client that comes in and they're navigating all of this, right? So the first thing that I talked about, which would be your inner landscape and is my truth, is what I call your North Star or your reference point. It's when things get rough, like where are you looking? Where are you like,
mm,
what are you seeking into? Oh, the North Star. Oh, it's there. Okay, truth. Is this true? No, like how you're like, this is not true. Like this is fear. And so the energy is real, but the belief behind it isn't true. Right.
mm,
So that, that compass is super necessary. And that's the backbone of everything. And depending on the person's capacity, I work with a range of clients, people who have been doing conscious spiritual work for decades,
mm,
right? And there's some things to tie up, or people who have never heard the word conscious in their fucking life. And they're like,
mm,
what is that? Right? It's establishing that framework for them and then bringing them into the conversation in relation to that.
mm,
How I do that is I take, for example, I'll do it with Zoe again. If I'm my own client, having them understand that what's going on at any given moment in their life is they are on this path to further embodying capital Z Zoe, right? The higher self, if we follow spiritual literature, the most aligned version of you, not just the one who has the yacht. If you're Zoe, she has the yacht and she's also living her fullest expression, right? All of the things,
mhm,
abundance. So the highest version of you, which I call your capital Z, your capital, whatever the first letter of your first name is, and
mm,
then the versions of you that you're playing out, your stories, the lowercase Z's that are very real to be honored and loved and accepted, like Angelica. And I have many of them, right?
mm,
Many of them. And so understanding that, like both of these two operating frameworks, I do it through a method that I call meet, embody, maintain. That's like the method that I use with my clients. I use it in my group. It's infused in everything I do and every time I talk. Even when I think I'm not talking about it, it's like infused in there. And it's understanding the framework of truth and then understanding who you are in relation to truth and who you are in relation to your highest self, where you are on that pathway that's
Mm-hmm.
continuing to expand, and how you can look at this, new awareness, this new insight that you have, and catch yourself when you're being a lowercase z, not because you're like, oh, I just want to be enlightened and like levitate, it's just to be like the process that, when you heard me earlier, kind of feeling into myself, that compassionate voice that's like, and I teach it experientially with my clients through conversation, all different types of ways, but being with, let's say I'm with Angelica right now, and I just closed my eyes and I have my left hand over my heart and I'm feeling into where she is in my body. So Angelica used to hang out a lot in my chest, and I feel her and I'm like, hey, thanks for showing up for me. I know you've been showing up in a bunch of different ways. I know you've been showing up through my thoughts and my actions and my behaviors and the things that I'm manifesting and creating. And I keep forgetting that you're on my side. I keep forgetting that you are me. And I'm sorry about that. And if you're anything like me, to have to apologize took a lot when I was first doing this work, because I was so angry. And all these, like, I saw them as lowercase because they were lesser than. I was like, you
Mm-hmm.
peasants, like, get out of here. So giving patience, because in the beginning it sounded much more like, Angelica, fuck you, frankly, like, I have to get on the yacht and I'm really angry that you're showing up. And so if you're in that embodiment listening to this and you're hearing this and there's versions of you that are lowercase and you're just like not feeling like apologizing, you're just kind of like still angry, the authenticity of that is really important, because you're learned, that's actually what self-trust is. When you can be fucking honest with yourself, then you can be honest with everyone else. So if I'm gonna not feeling cute about Angelica, I'm gonna tell her, and then I'm going to catch myself after that, after I have that authentic expression, and be like, and I know that it's my journey on this path to keep showing up for you, because you're me and
Mm-hmm.
you really hurt and you were born from somewhere. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry for all the times that I wanted to push you away. I'm sorry for all the times I still do want to push you away because you're annoying as fuck. Like, and I will come back to and then I'll be like, oops, okay. So, and that's the realness of it, the authenticity of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowing the word messy to be comfortable and okay for you, and
Mm-hmm.
like fun, even like if you really want to be crazy, like allowing this to just be what it is, allowing all of this to be okay, allowing yourself to give yourself grace as you navigate. Maybe you thought when you first heard this there would be one cat lowercase z, and then you go about your life and there's 10 of them, and you're running, I always used to say I'm running a daycare because there were like so many of them. And then now it's just like they're all in the car of my Tesla, and they have snacks and they're just looking out the window. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's the process of it, and showing yourself compassion, because the truth of the matter, as I believe, is that energy, your lowercase aspects, identities. Some people say shadows, and I have a very specific opinion on that, and I never use that word because of the connotation, right? But those identities are here to be loved by you. That's it. They're not here
Mm-hmm.
to hang out and ruin your life. They're here to be seen by you and loved by you, in that order. So if you're avoiding them, by insert your avoidance behavior here, right? If you're avoiding them, or if you're castigating them, if you're judging them, none of that is seeing them. So when you see them, and then you really balls to the wall and you can love, like even the Angelicas,
Mm-hmm.
that's what integration is. That's what transmutation is. That's what alchemy is from truth. Because you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I accept, come into me. I'm not casting you away. Come into me. I got us now. It's safe. Angelica, I know that you used to think that I wouldn't get out of bed if it wasn't for you. And I probably kept you around because I thought that was true. I thought that I wouldn't get out of bed if it wasn't for you, because you were my operating voice. I got all the grades because of you. I got and there's a more aligned way. And we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
figure out what it is. I got you. You can take a break now. I got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I teach it. My dog's like, yeah, integration,
Mm-hmm.
shadow.
I love it. And the last question that I have for you, which really like you tied in perfectly at the end, which is like it's a more aligned way. And I think this just wraps a bow on this whole conversation, which is the idea of like the feminine and masculine balance. And this is such an interesting one because this is only something I've really learned this year of really tapping into it and practicing embodying it. But like, and I think this could be a whole episode within itself, to be honest. And I foresee that there will be another episode of this diving in. But I'm curious, like we live in a world now where it's like we're seeing a lot more men that are struggling with I mean, men have really high suicides rates across the whole world, right? And there's a lot of this masculinity that has become more just like, it's, for lack of a better term, like lazy energy, right? It's consuming this. It's just a lot less about like passion and purpose. It's more about like just kind of quieting like pain and anger and resentment and a lot of different behaviors. And then there's a lot of this movement of like the feminine movement, right? And femininity and empowering women to be more in the workforce and go out and do all these like almost like corporate like masculine style like jobs and career paths. And so for me, as just like an anecdote in like my own life, it's like, and I'm sure in a lot of ways she won't mind me sharing this, but my little sister, it's been so beautiful the last like year or so, because like I've seen so much in her. Like she's struggling to like figure out exactly what she wants to do with her life. And what I've started to notice is like there's been this like masculine, like do more, do this, do this, do this, do this, like type of thing in her life that's like guided her away from her like feminine like energy of really wanting to be this like beautiful, creative, nurturing force that's like really like the traditional style of like building a beautiful home and right raising children and stepping into that. And so like I've really seen like I just so much in myself. I just want to pour more of that into her, like for my own masculine frame as I strengthen this within myself and really support more of that within her. And I wonder like we came into this and it was very important for you like in the beginning of like, hey, let's step into our masculine and feminine. And I immediately I was like, yeah, I absolutely love this. And like so I'm curious, like where do you see this playing out in society of like this imbalance, and why is it so important that we step back into this balance?
Oh, I love it. I could talk about that particular piece for 7 million years. And
Mm,
it's, as someone where I chose to buy into from the feminine perspective, that for lack of a better term, feminist culture, I was very into I can do what a man can do and better. Like that was and it tied in perfectly with all the other things that made sense, right? The lack of safety and not having to be with myself. It was like the perfect bow and like perfect, you know? And then on the men's side, having us understand that men, and I love the conversation of men and women, especially the conversation of men, because men, very like by design, men have just as much fucking emotions as women. I come from a belief where I believe the design of the utilization of that energy is different. Both genders, if we're talking about like physical embodiment, are meant to feel their fucking emotions, process their emotions, release their emotions, express their emotions, and have all that shit be safe and liberating. Both
mm,
genders. From the way that I understand the masculine as opposed to the masculine within the emotional processing and expression and release from that energy is meant to be moved, right? Within
mm,
the masculine frame. So when it comes to society, it's like opening up even just things like this, like conversations where people can back and forth on ideas and allowing men just as much as women. And I think it's interesting that now I'm speaking on behalf of men and I'll go into women, but it's like, I think it's also powerful too to hear men speak from a woman who's very like, I fucking love men. I think men
mm,
are so divine. And I did not always think that way. I was like, men, they don't get it. And now I'm like, love men so much. It's like men have to have a homecoming just like how women do, where they can even first like have their little antennas to this conversation, to consciousness, to exploring the depths of their emotions, because just like with women, if they don't, they will create it. It's the
mm,
nature of the energy of the design and how it wants to come up. And then the power of brotherhood, power of mentors like yourself, like masculine embodied leaders who can explain the emotional processing. I do it also with men. I just do it from a feminine frame, which is unique, right? But it's like the emotional processing of the man and then using the archetype of the man down to his sex organs, the penetrative forces. Okay, now with this energy, where do we go from here? Right?
mm,
What do we do from here? Where do we go? Like, okay, I cried, now this. Like it. and I'm screaming, what about that? Right? That kind of progressive force, which is standard in leadership, women also have that trait in their
Mm,
masculine frame within their own embodiment. And like
mm,
it sounds like in your sister or with me, and the majority of the people who come to find me, it's like allowing us, because if the invitation for men is to do this work, to find brotherhood, to find the consistency to do this on a life path, like how Ben has and so many of our mutual friends have. For women, if you're in any point in navigating this, want to come into your feminine, unsure, navigating this conversation, you're like curious about all this, your invitation, just as much as it's on men to be like masculine leaders from alignment, it's on you to fucking soften. Like
mm,
you have to, especially if you're like, I work so much and I just want the man to lead me. Like, can you be led? Start
mm,
with like an audit that I just did in Money Club was a receiving audit that you can ask yourself at any point. If someone gives you a compliment, what do you say? Are you like, oh no, you? Or are you like, thank you, I received that, thank you. Like, how deeply can you allow yourself to receive? And I know I got like direct and aggressive, and I actually very much meant to, because I want this to pierce like any
mm,
kind of woman who's navigating the conversation and has any kind of inkling that they get to blame anyone other than themselves. There's a tremendous amount of ownership as someone who I've invested years of softening and having that be absolutely fucking terrifying. And it sounds like for both genders, the softening is scary, right? But when we do it in proper polarity, when the woman is able to allow herself to soften, whether it's through mentorship or connecting to her feminine core and have that be a consistent journey, like how I kind of want to tie this all together, and the word hope comes up, but it's stronger than hope. If I'm going to be completely honest, it's a fucking certainty that I have, is we're going to get there. We're on the way there. Like I even have it tattooed. I have a tattoo of the Fibonacci sequence, like the golden
mm,
spiral, which is this visual that it's like the staircase that spirals upwards, because that's how consciousness works. There is no regression. We're always progressing forward. We're
mm,
going to get there. We're going to get there. It's asking you individually, before I get collective, it's asking you individually, women, like, will you let yourself soften, or will you let yourself get sick? Right? Men,
mm,
will you let yourself soften and act and take on leadership from alignment instead of misalignment and validation and, unsafety? Will you soften and act, or will you let yourself get sick? Or
mm,
because either way you run it, you're still going to get there. You are
mm,
still going to get there. So I highly recommend the path where you are in the driver's seat. You're in it whether you see it or not, to bring it back
mm,
to how we started. But to say, like, maybe that you even listen to this conversation and it sparks questions, or an anger or an emotion, and having all that be sacred and safe. And then the final thing is, don't sweep absolutely fucking anything under the rug anymore. Don't sweep
mm,
your curiosities under the rug. Don't sweep your desires under the rug, your greatest passions. And, you know, the last thing, I guess, on top of that last thing, was the word logic comes through for me, because what keeps us looping, quote unquote, even though that's not real because we're progressing, is because we feel attached to this concept of logic. Like, this doesn't
mm,
make sense. Doesn't make sense. Making sense, you gotta let that shit go, my friends.
mm.
Like, I wouldn't be where I was. I wouldn't have made six figures the first time I ever decided to be a business person, that I didn't know my asshole from my elbow. I swear to God. And if I was addicted to this narrative of it having to make sense, I would be in some corporate job very sick and burnt out. And luckily, my embodiment didn't let me get to that point. Don't let it
Mm,
get to that point. Let yourself explore. And I mean this with all the magic, and I'm sure you can feel it, like that part of you that's like Harry Potter. Like, your life is Harry Potter. If you don't believe me, we'll have another conversation, but it's like, allow yourself for the only thing that is actually capital R real in your life, individually and collectively, is the magic of you, and the magic of
mm,
what we can create in polarity. So
mm.
that's what I think about on that.
I loved the passion, like because you noticed it within yourself, like I'm being a little bit hard, like that was also like the masculine coming out in you to also say like listen, like and really bring that like into that person, right? You're moving energy within other people as well. And so it was beautiful to get to like watch all of the flow that you were in. And I think that this is a really, really, really important conversation, because one of the most amazing parts of this human experience is relationships and connection. And when we are totally out of balance in ourselves and in our relationships, like one of the most amazing gifts that we've ever been given, to connect with someone so deeply, we don't get to experience that gift as deeply as we could. And it's so beautiful, because I work with a lot of men, but I also, and that's just because that's just typically who comes to me, but I've worked with some women, and actually, like, one in particular, she was just like one of the most, like, not to pick favorites, just one of the most amazing to get to work with. And I think part of it is like when I'm working with men, it's like so beautiful to say like, hey, it's okay to feel, right? And get to create this space within men to help them feel more. But like the same thing with women. It's like to create this space where it's like, hey, all the stuff that you feel you've got to do, like to be seen by enough as a man and be by seen as enough in society, like all of that, man, just how can we find safety for you just to feel okay just as you are? And like it's the most beautiful thing to have gotten to, and I'm work in progress, but to have been able to step into my divine masculine energy and be able to be that and hold that space for people is one of the greatest fucking gifts that I've ever been given on this planet, because I get to go into these conversations and help that person feel more like themselves. And I can just watch this release happening in their eyes and in their body, just softening, like they're finally coming home. And it's not like, oh, now we've had one conversation and everything's, quote unquote fixed. It's a journey, but like, oh, it is just one of the greatest gifts. And so, by giving that to another person, they get to then give that to more people in their life. They bring that more, like the women, she brings more of that embodied feminine into her life, which then feeds onto the other women in her life and the other men in her life. And likewise, I get to help a man step into his fucking power. And, I only work with people that have really good intentions. At least I do my best to, right? Not a man that wants to just like go out and be a detriment to society, like a man that really wants to love and serve and help. I want to empower that man to fucking go out and step into his power and go give that gift to the world. And so I think that we could have a whole conversation on this topic, but I think just our conversation today has been a really cool example of like, we didn't plan any of the questions or conversations or anything, and it's been just over 2 hours now, and like it felt like a blink of the eye for me, and I felt so much energy coming from this conversation. So I think it's a great example of two people that are working on embodying their power and trusting that we don't have to have everything planned out to have an amazing conversation. And I trust that this landed for the people today that this was supposed to land for. And so, Zoe, I thank you for this space. I thank you for helping me see my own worth and my own power and getting to embody my own masculine energy. And I appreciate you being so radiant and authentic and joyful, and being able to hold this space, and get to watch you and your expression. And what a gift to all the people that listen.
Ah, received.
Mm.
Received so, so, so deeply.
Mm.
And to extend you also gratitude. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. If you guys are listening to this, I am going to have all of Ben's info, where to find him, how to reach out to him in the show notes. Highly, highly, highly encourage you, if you have even a semblance of a resonance with him, reach out, make yourself known. Same with me. You guys already know that I love chatting, getting to know you. It's a very open space. We love you very much, and we're sending you so much love on this beautiful day. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Expressions. Thank you, Source, for guiding this combo. We love you.
Mm. Thank you.